Welcome to Patscast, the unofficial Regina Pats podcast. We are a proud member of the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. I'm Matt.
I'm Chris.
And this is our episode for January 6, 2019.
For Zach Wooding. Top right circled Denemy. Slap shot.
There it
scores!
is. What
Carson Denemy, second of the night. Gives the Pats a 2-0 lead.
Just a laser by Denemy.
Across the line, hit for Holmes. Goes backhand and scores! Robbie Holmes! 13 seconds in. Dubinsky centered. Inglot scores! What a tip by Drew Inglot into the top of the net.
Okay, you might be maybe missing our live broadcast. A little bit of a technical difficulty today, so we're doing it old school, just audio. It kind of feels a little different now, hey? Yeah. Not doing it live. We'll get right into it. We've got a really good episode today. We have Joshua Critzer from Dub Network. We spoke to him on Sunday, and he's going to give us a little rundown of the U.S. division. We're heading out there here right away. So he graciously gave us some of his time, and he's from Portland, so he sees the U.S. division quite a bit.
Valuable time. It was during the
yeah,
gold medal game,
yeah, absolutely.
and the Vikings game.
This was a busy weekend for sports, as everyone knows. That being said, the Pats had quite a busy weekend, busy week really. Played 5 games in a matter of 7 or 8 days. Yeah, unfortunately not. Well, I mean, last episode I was.
Yeah, we were a little optimistic.
I was optimistic. I'm just typically that kind of guy. We were looking at the way they were playing and the stats they were putting up. And really, I said if they can continue that type of winning percentage, they'll maybe not make the playoffs, but they'd be in the hunt. Now, unfortunately, this week came and went, and out of a possible, 10 points, we ended up with 3. Dropped 2 games, and these were teams that we really needed to get some points out of. You're looking at Brandon, who you're chasing, Swift Current, you're trying to stay ahead of, and then PA, I mean, that was whatever happened in that game.
Yeah, and they were a team that was been struggling lately, and
yeah, and I think they just won last night or the night before against
Winnipeg.
Edmonton. Yeah, Winnipeg. You're right. But up to then, they were, I think, on almost a 9 or 10 game losing streak.
Yeah, they were real struggling, and Winnipeg was real hot, actually.
So this last week was really, it was for the Pats to take, right?
It was for the pickings, pickings there.
You have Brandon, who we've had some success against, PA, who was struggling, and then Swift Current, the worst team in the league. This was it. We could have theoretically had 8 points.
Yeah, we were being optimistic with 3 wins.
We said maybe 6, but really, anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're maybe not talk about every single game individually, since we do have quite a bit to talk about. I think just overall this week it's disappointing. Yeah. It really was.
And Strush summed it up, missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to describe this week. Missed opportunities and not getting, I mean, the Swift Current games. Sure, the game here, you can say there's a lot of bad bounces or just not getting the goals, but I mean, you let in 12 goals against the worst team in the league. And at this point with Paddock, I mean, teams aren't going to look at these 2 games maybe and say, oh, he's not that good. They'll look at the whole product, but man, I don't know if something was in his head with the trade deadline coming or what's going on, but
you looked at some of those goals. I don't know how much of the Friday night, the away game you saw.
A fair bit.
Okay, but so you look at those goals, they're 2-on-1s.
So many 2-on-1s.
And it was just, they played well, they dominated offensively, but they had defensive breakdowns, and it was in the back of the net. It was just
so many breakdowns. And I was surprised Swift Current took advantage of a lot of those.
And that's the thing. Swift Current scored on every breakdown, every chance they had. They didn't have
They did not look shots. Like a basement-dwelling team, to be honest.
But at some points, though, they did, right? The Pats were dominating the offensive zone. They were carrying the play for long stretches. And then all of a sudden, a bounce happens, and it's a 2-on-1, and boom. They haven't had the puck for 5 minutes, but it's in the back of our net. But
they take advantage, or we let them take advantage of just the little mistakes we did make. Or
they
weren't that little, I guess. I shouldn't say that, but...
And it was just the 2-on-1s and
so many, and defense being out of position.
Yeah, and we
There
haven't
was
seen that really that much this year per se.
We did once in a while,
But yeah,
they seem to be able to recover. But
not glaring.
it just was
mistakes.
so exposed. There was one. Walker was way out of position. Setoff was way out of position. Both giving up 2-on-1s that led to goals. It just.
Yeah, and I was a little disappointed in Winning's effort on the 2-on-1s. Like, it was a little tough, but
It was a tough week.
yeah.
It's just sad because we were just getting a little glimmer of hope, and even if they got 6 to 8 and up to 8 points out of this week, then we'd be singing a different tune. But
well, let's look at some positives then. You look at Drew Englot, 2 goals in the 2 Swift Current games. He's really stepped up his game. He's been really, like you said before, good effort.
Yeah.
He's been on the penalty kill, on the power play now, and he's doing a lot for the team now. He's getting a lot more ice time.
Absolutely.
And Strucher's really happy with his game recently. I'll be doing
and Seacart.
He scored
import that came in. Seems to be fitting in well. He's got a goal. He's on power plays. He's in the shootout, so he's picking up. We talked a bit about this with Josh, but he's finding a bit of a bigger role here, which is good for him. I think.
Yeah, he's definitely going to get more ice time than he had in Tri-City, so it's there for the taking for him to take that opportunity that he's going to be given, because there could be some more trades here soon, and these younger guys will be getting a lot more ice time.
Some of the positives you can look at, so the loss against Brandon and the win against PA, our penalty kill over those 2 games was 12 for 12.
Yeah.
And you can see it fall apart then in against Swift Current. We went 1 for 4 in the power. So they scored 3 power play goals
in Friday.
Yeah.
And then 1 on Saturday. So 4. Yeah. They scored 4 power play goals. Yeah. Swift Current had a total of 9 going in. So they
for the season.
Yeah. So they were last.
And I didn't get to the game. I just this busy weekend, but I did listen to it and watched it. So Mitchell Blair was on the call with Phil, and he said for whatever, and he saw that game, the last game that was here, that just dumpster fire against Swift Current, and he says whatever Swift Current does,
that midweek Wednesday game,
the makeup game that was brutal. He says whatever Swift Current does, they just don't let the Pats play our game, and they just either bog it down or bottleneck it or whatever they do, just
drag
really
teams down to their level.
Yeah. So whatever, they just play their game, and maybe they have adapted to their skill level. And he says Swift Current just it's an odd game when we play them, and it's frustrating. It was really frustrating to watch those games.
Yeah, because we were hoping for 4 points out of those 2 games.
Yeah. Oh, we would have expected that, and then we were expecting maybe a split with Brandon, and then a toss up with PA.
Yeah.
So here we are, and then Sunday 5-0 loss to Brandon. I don't know if it's just.
I think they just ran out of gas. They looked a little rough.
I don't blame them for that.
No,
it's just kind of the last statement on a tough week.
Yeah.
But you do have an interview with Struch. Now, this is one of the first times we've heard him be a little more negative than before. Yeah,
there was one other game he was pretty negative.
So you had that chance to talk to Struch after the game on Sunday. He spoke about that Sunday game, but I kind of got the feeling it was more his emotion about it was summarizing the whole weekend, basically saying there's teams that they have to try and keep up with or keep their sights on. Meanwhile, teams behind them that they have to play better than, and they didn't execute. And like I said, it was probably one of the more negative interviews that he usually finds the positive and talks about the good things, and he didn't find a lot in this.
Yeah, especially on Sunday. And Greg even asked him, he's like, is it because of the schedule? Like, are the guys tired? And he's like, no, I asked the guys, were they tired? And Struch said they weren't tired. And then Greg asked him, do you believe them? And he said no. So, it was a tough grind.
They're going to feel that in their legs.
And he was, like I said before, he was generally happy with the Swift Current games. Like I talked to him on Saturday night, but he's like, no, the breakdowns, we gotta definitely work on that. That's obviously why they lost the games. He was happy with the rest of the game, which I wouldn't see any issue with that.
And it felt like defensive breakdowns too, right?
Yeah.
Guys stepping up when they should have, maybe trying to do too much. And
like we've talked about, that Setoff's kind of been doing that. He's taken that, not liberties, but he's stepped up and trying to drive some plays into the offensive zone, which is not a bad thing. That's
what I was going to say. To be fair, they've had some success lately. And there was one game where I think our D scored 3 or 4 goals.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it just didn't work out this time, right? So it's tough. I think what we'll do, with those interviews, the audio didn't come out too well. What we'll do is we'll just put it up on just as a Twitter post. So if you do want to listen to it, it just didn't quite meet the audio quality that we would want to put up on there.
Saturday night, Swift Current was pretty pumped about the wins, so they had their music just cranked. A couple of the pad staff were not too happy about that. And then, Sunday nights, the Zamboni kind of took over the audio a bit there.
So we'll put them up if you guys want to listen to them. Yeah, they just didn't quite fit into the broadcast. Now, one we do want to talk about here is, let's just talk about it in general. The trade deadline's coming up. So we've seen Ty Cole get moved. We talk about this in our interview with Josh. In return, we get, I'm going to pronounce his name as Ian, till someone corrects us. Yeah. Ian Samoza. So he plays with Easton Armstrong down in L.A. So he is a forward. He's got 14 goals, 15 assists in 16 games. Him and Easton are actually 1 and 2 in scoring on the team. So you have to think that relationship had something to do with acquiring that guy.
Oh, most likely.
Yeah. And starting to build some pieces. Ty Cole, we sort of expected him to get moved.
Yeah, he's been playing pretty well lately.
He's looked great, and I think we'll let Josh, when he speaks to it a little bit, he has some good points about his history, and he thinks Ty will have some success there. We talked a little about Max Paddock, last week we thought he was our best asset that'll get moved. I guess we'll see how that plays out over the next couple days here.
Heard a rumor that the third goalie is in town.
Yeah,
maybe just in case something does get done. So,
right, and so we'll see how that plays out. And a little bit of breaking news was coming out of Moose Jaw tonight. This is a big kind of ball to drop. We have a clip from another show. This is from Guy Flaming's Pipeline podcast, and he borrowed this from someone else. We feel like we can take the liberty to play it as well.
Yeah, so
this is news to me. I hadn't heard this. I thought you said you had mentioned it, but
yeah, I think I might have mentioned it on a previous show. This aired on November 29th on Pipeline Show. I don't know what day would the actual audio clip was from, but it'd be right around that same time, kind of when the whole Babcock thing went down and all these coaches started getting losing their jobs due to off-ice kind of things. So, and I heard this, and I was pretty shocked by it. And then he gets fired today. And I don't think it was on ice. Well, you never know. But the team overachieved last year, and I don't think they expected maybe to be last in the division this year. But I don't think they expected to be much better than what they are. They are struggling right now, but so I don't know if this has anything to do with it or not, but
yeah, so we'll throw it over to Guy Flaming of the Pipeline Show.
A player who was there and shared some insight into Tim Hunter was Noah Gregor. And Jason Gregor, who hosts a show here in Edmonton on TSN 1260, earlier this week, after the news Mike Babcock came out, weighed in on that a little bit and relayed some of the stories that Noah Gregor had told him about Tim Hunter. I'm just going to share the clip. This comes from the Jason Gregor show on TSN 1260. Greg's is on from 2 until 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. Here's what what Jason Gregor had to say earlier this week.
Any type of abuse is about power. And Mike Babcock wanted to ensure that everybody knew he was the big dog at the top. And sadly, there are coaches like that. Some of the worst are in junior. I talked about it on my show, and I had to tread very lightly a few years because my nephew played for Tim Hunter, who was a complete ass as a human being on how he treated young players in that organization. Go look at Moose Jaw and wonder why, with all their good players, that ever won in the playoffs. Right? When you bench your veteran, toughest player on your team, Josh Thrower, in games 6 and 7 because he's 10 minutes late for curfew and because you want to show everybody you're the big hot dog, he wasn't coming back to your team the next year. Right? You make players clean the bus at 3 a.m. because you didn't like how they played a game. Seriously? And go down the list. Berating a young rookie in front of the entire team, mocking them, right? And the worst part was the players after my nephew left and was playing in another team with 2 games left in the season, they had a player revolt. You want to know why? Because Tim Hunter, because he didn't like how the team was playing, he quit coaching on the bench and had a temper tantrum. And their captain at the time, Brett Howden, had to coach the game. He had to run the bench in the 3rd period. That's your leader? And then when the players finally had enough, and it's hard when you're 16 and 17 and 18 and 19, and Tim Hunter's an imposing figure. And the thing was, Tim Hunter had a lot of really good ideas as a coach. He really promoted offense, right? It doesn't mean he was bad in every element, but his communication skills were awful. And then when the players finally had to call their GM to say, hey, like with 2 games left in the season, they're one of the top teams, and you're having a revolt of not wanting to play for your coach, of course they're not going to win the playoffs. And then he's like, well, geez, I didn't think they'd think that way. What? What way did you think they'd react? So it does happen more than people think.
Yeah, I had no idea that was going on there, and those are some strong stories and some strong words.
Yeah, definitely.
And the thing is, you said you didn't know if it was performance-based, but, I mean, this isn't probably a new thing for him. He's probably been doing this for as long as he's been there. So I can't help but think someone was turning a blind eye, and then because they were successful, and then when they weren't, it's like, well, now it's not okay.
Yeah, that could be it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, when I first heard that, I was pretty shocked, and then
I know, and
they were fine with it, right? Until now.
Yeah. You played that interview for me before we came on. I thought, this is a whole ball of wax. I don't even know where to go with it.
Well, that's why I wanted you to hear it before we actually played it.
Right. Yeah, that's a whole, but it's timely because of what happened today. But yeah,
that's definitely interesting.
Very interesting, isn't it? Okay, let's get into the interview. Before we do that, trivia for the day. So I was thinking I think we talked a little bit this last year. We talked about the distance of that teams travel. So Regina to Portland is a 1,788 kilometer drive, and then
I've done that one
there. Yeah, you have. So they'll be driving around. I don't know what this total road trip will be. Probably somewhere around 6,000 kilometers. Well, maybe not even that much there and back. But it started me thinking about teams that travel the most in the pro leagues. I'll let you think about some of the teams that you think. So if NFL, NHL, MLB, then I did get the W, Q, and O. And I think we talked about junior hockey last year, but we didn't talk about some of the pro teams. So while you're pondering some of the farthest distances that pro teams travel, so the Saskatchewan Podcast Network is supported by Connexus. Money doesn't have to be stressful, and Connexus is here to help. The Connexus #MoneyTalk blog provides expert advice, tips, and solutions for all of life's stages and events. Check it out today at connexusmoneytalk.ca and start feeling confident and stress-free about your money. Okay, so the NFL, the Oakland Raiders traveled the farthest. This is in 2019. They went 32,000 miles.
Okay, so this is a season total then.
Season total, yeah. That's quite a bit. And this is miles, remember? So that's a lot of flying. They're saying, I was reading this, John Gruden's apparently quite claustrophobic and doesn't like planes. So, yeah.
So they must have, because in the other conference, they must have had the East Coast, the East.
Yeah, they fly. They must have been flying all over the place.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, the Jets only traveled 6,700 miles.
Yeah, that East Coast.
So they can almost bust that.
Well, you look at the NHL, how they set up the new divisions, right? There's the Metropolitan Division, and then there's what's the other one called? The Atlantic.
Yeah, I
Right?
don't know.
So they put all the New York, New Jersey, Washington, Philly all together, and then
Yeah.
you got the Canadian teams, and then you got the Florida teams in the same division.
Yes.
It just they total just
So that
cater.
brings up the next one, the NHL. Edmonton, Calgary, and San Jose both traveled about the same at 52,000 miles.
So do you have that compare that to the New York teams?
No,
No, okay.
come on, put
Yeah.
me on the spot. No, I was just picking the highest. You can go look up this if you want. Now the MLB, this is the highest. In 2019, Seattle traveled 58,000 miles. That's insane. That's a lot of time on a plane. So just for comparison's sakes, WHL PG traveled the most, 18,000 miles. The Q Cape Breton was just over 18 as well. Actually, very, very close, like within 20 kilometers of PG, which is kind of weird when you, right? Over
Yeah,
that distance, and they end up being within 20.
I didn't realize that they were kind of because they're not far away from other teams.
Yeah, I don't know. They had to. And the Sioux was
yeah.
by far the farthest at 12,000 miles. So do you want to talk about anything before we get into the interview with Josh?
No, I think he does a really good job at. Thanks again for him coming on because he did a very good job of what we wanted. I think.
Yeah, and like we said, we wanted to talk to him because we don't get to see the U.S. division very often at all, really, unless you try and watch unless you purposely watch them and try and watch some of their games. Just seems like a different league out there sometimes. And
Yeah, so if you're actually gonna flip on WHL Live and watch these games,
they're a little late.
yeah,
I was looking at them like 9 o'clock for Portland. What's 9:30 in Seattle? At least that's a Friday.
yeah,
So really, it's that Portland game that's really going to be a doozy at 9.
Tuesday night,
Yeah.
9. Yeah, that's over at 11:30.
Okay, we'll hand it off to Josh here now. Okay, everyone, we'd like to welcome Joshua Critzer to Pat's Cast. He is a member of Dub Network, and Chris has contacted him, and thankfully Josh has come in on this busy Sunday afternoon during the Gold Medal World Junior Hockey Championship and busy football. So thanks, Josh, for taking time out of your busy day to do this with us. We've both got the game on record, and we're currently on a internet Twitter blackout, so we don't get that game ruined for us. You have a bit of a vested interest in that game with Joel Hofer backstopping Canada. Who are you cheering for in this game?
I think the fairest answer for that, being an American, is I'm cheering for Joel Hofer.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. So you are.
But I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, thanks for taking your time out. So why don't you just give us a little background on who you are and why you're so interested in hockey and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got my start. I moved out to the Pacific Northwest about 4 years ago from Minnesota, where my background is in high school hockey and the NCAA path. So very different than the CHL path that we're talking about here today. And a lot of my experiences running pre-scouts for high school teams and college teams and trying to help them where I can. And kind of covering players who are deciding to go that NCAA route. And then I moved out to Portland in 2015 and fell in love with the WHL and needed hockey like any good Minnesota boy, and found the Winterhawks and was very well aware of them with some of the players that go back and forth between or at least back to go to the WHL from Minnesota. So got my start that way, and this is my second year with Dub Network covering the Winterhawks, and kind of picked on an increased role this year, now helping cover the U.S. division and really trying to kind of help highlight some of the stories that is a very fun U.S. division. It's a very maybe a little bit different style of hockey than what we've seen with some of the other teams that come through, or fans who have maybe only seen some of the Canadian teams. So it's maybe a little bit of a different style division than maybe some of the others in the WHL.
Right on, and it is a division we don't get to see very often. It's maybe one of the unfortunate byproducts of having such a big league and just geographically big, right?
Yep.
Where you have all the way from Winnipeg all the way out to Portland. I don't know how many kilometers or miles that is, but it's significant. And it's funny when we talk with some of our OHL buddies, it just doesn't even register to them how big this division or this league is. So yeah, it's one of those things that's kind of neat for us to get to see these teams come in every 2 years. I don't know how you guys feel about when these Western teams come out, if it draws a bit of a different attention or anything like that. But we certainly like seeing the American teams when they do their trips out here. Sorry, go ahead.
It's exciting because you don't get an opportunity to see some of these teams. Like you said, it's every other year, and for like you mentioned, it's maybe a little bit different. And I know a lot of the diehards get really excited, especially seeing the different jerseys. Portland sees a lot of Seattle, and Everett and Seattle see a lot of each other, and Spokane and Tri-City see a lot of each other. So getting some different faces and different jerseys into the building always seems to draw some fans and kind of see what else is out there in the league.
Yeah, and those rivalries really get built up because they play each other much more often with being the smaller conference.
Yeah, so Portland and Seattle play, I believe it's 12 times a year. Ooh. And then it's a lot. And then, I mainly, know more about the schedule with Portland, so I apologize about that. But they've got 8 games then against kind of the rest of the teams. So it's a lot of games since there are 2 less teams in the conference. But, I think Spokane and Tri-City see a lot of each other as well. And, Seattle and Everett are like that. And, Portland and some of these U.S. Division teams have, their shortest commute is a couple hours. So, it can, it can be some long bus rides. Portland's closest one is about half hours up to Kent, which is where Seattle plays. So, talking with some of your OHL guys, that could potentially be some of their longest bus trips. When Portland goes to Prince George, I think it's like a 12 or 14 hour bus ride if they go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's fun.
And I went to school in BC, and I had the chance to get down to Spokane for some games. And some people in Canada, I think, often think that we have the best fans and the best culture of hockey, but hockey is alive and well down there. We rolled up to a game, so it's Spokane versus Tri-City, one of their main rivals, and we just expected to walk up and buy a ticket for $6 or something, whatever we thought it would be, and we couldn't get a ticket. It was sold out, and thankfully there was someone who had a bunch of promo tickets, and they were trying to give them away, but it was a full crowd. It was a lot of fun. We got down there for a few playoff games too. Yeah, it's an awesome culture down there. So anyone who doesn't think it is and thinks that Canada is the only place that you can have hockey, it is fun down there.
Yeah, and you mentioned Spokane and Tri-City, when they meet, those games typically sell out like you experienced. And last night Portland and Tri-City had over 9,000 fans in the building, and Seattle had a couple weeks ago, I think they had close to 6,000 fans, which is a near capacity sellout for them. So and I can't remember how many Everett holds, but they always seem to draw really well when Seattle comes up to town. And so yeah, the fans are knowledgeable. They're into the game. They're cheering on penalty kills when a player holds onto the puck for a while and kind of kills off precious seconds. So they know when to cheer and get involved. And one of the big things we always hear is just how loud the music is when other teams come, and other media members come in. It just seems that the music's louder, and it sometimes kind of has that, I don't want to say a pro type atmosphere to it, but there gets to be a decent amount of corporate seats and stuff that gets sold too. So it kind of has sometimes this, a little bit of a pro feel to it. And
yeah, it absolutely does. It does. It has a different feel than the Canadian games that I've been to. It and it's not in a bad way. It goes back to, we talked to a guy that's gone to a lot of OHL and CHL games, and he speaks to that just the production and you can tell when it's kind of cheaply done or something like that. But in the States, it's just a different business, it feels like, and it comes through in their product, and it was enjoyable. I really liked going down there, and Chris and I often talk about getting down to an Oregon Ducks game, so we might have to add on some WHL
Yeah.
games too. I think if we ever manage to do that trip.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
with the hockey being like a niche sport in the States, it's still the fans who are there know their hockey. Like they're right up on it, just like the Canadians are.
Yep, I think you're spot on. And the other point I was going to make is Everett. I know last year they won the award for the best business office or whatever that award is that the WHL gives out. So they do a great job of marketing and getting people into the building and fun promotions. Seattle has 2 for Tuesdays where buy one get a ticket free and 2 for 1 beers. So some of those they've got some good promotions. I know Tri City's running a $5 ticket for kids and teens today on Sunday. So they do some good promotions to really draw in both the diehard fans as well as get the casuals into the building and really try and grow the game.
I know I was sure surprised when I saw Seattle running that 2 for Tuesday in the finals when Regina was playing them. I was a little surprised by that.
Yeah, they, it's one of their favorite promotions, and you want to talk about getting a crowd into it. 2 for 1 beers will certainly help you.
Oh, no doubt, for sure.
Maybe this is a baiting question, but when do you expect to see a Memorial Cup down there host?
It'll be interesting. I think it's it always makes it hard since it is the CHL, right? It stands for Canadian Hockey League.
Yeah.
So I think that makes it a challenge. I wouldn't be shocked if down the road with NHL Seattle and some of that when Seattle gets their pro team, if that maybe starts to draw some interest. I know there's talk about maybe even having like a World Juniors potentially in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, that seems like the first step, I think.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, because the USA last year, when the tournament was in Victoria and Vancouver, they held their camp at Everett's Angel of the Winds Arena. So that was kind of the first test for USA Hockey, who I think has their next one is like 2025, I think, is the next time they host. Don't quote me on that, but that was kind of like a test run of, you've got 2 good buildings that are recently, close by, with Everett and Seattle, or even if you wanted to, get a little bit larger of a building, you've got Portland that's not that far south from there that you can get, the Canadians from Vancouver and BC and, some of those guys to come down. It's not that far of a drive. So I think that's, like you said, it's maybe the first step is getting a World Juniors, but, it'll be interesting to see, but, I think that those tickets would be a harder sell in the States than it would be to Canadians.
You think so? Even with the decent fan bases that area has?
I do. I think just some of the the added ticket prices, there's a lot of things that are competing for attention, and with how niche of a sport it can be, I think it could potentially be, depending upon what the ticket prices are, given what we've seen for some of the past Memorial Cups. I think it could potentially price some fans out when they look at what their options are for the value. Some of the tickets like that are available, it's very family affordable. So, and I don't know if there's the history there. They're very passionate about hockey and they're very passionate about the team and the division. But I don't know as a whole if maybe some of the fans can really draw in like what it means to host a Memorial Cup and about what some of the teams in the O and the Q are doing.
Well, the Memorial Cup's been pricing like hockey cities out of it.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
Even
Yeah.
Regina, it wasn't sold out.
Yeah, you look at Windsor and then Regina after that, and the only reason Halifax did well because they had a much bigger building
And they brought that down.
and they brought the prices
They
down.
found maybe a more appropriate price for it.
Well, yeah, they could be with the amount of seating they had.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know the World Juniors is interesting because the U.S. really relies on the Canadian fan to really drive them. So it'll be interesting where they go next. And yeah, I'm not too sure when the next one is, but in the U.S. But like Buffalo, that's well been overdone, and so it's going to be interesting where they go next.
Yeah. No, I like that idea, though.
Yeah, I think the Northwest is definitely a great opportunity for the World Juniors.
Well, let's get into previewing the Pats road trip here. Starting off in Tri-City. So it's interesting. The Pats play on the Wednesday. Then we play Tri-City. So that's at home. Tri-City on Saturday. So it's going to be a lengthy bus trip, and then we're rolling right into TC on the 11th. So why don't you give us a little bit of a rundown of the Americans right now?
Yeah, Tri-City's in a tough stretch for them right now. They have one win in December, and they lost their first game to start the year in Portland last night. But right now they're still holding tight for that second wild card. That they're tied with Seattle with 31 points for that last wild card spot, and they've got 2 games in hand on the Thunderbirds. Tri-City, has kind of maybe been the key player so far in terms of the trade deadline that's going to occur on Friday. And, they've made 4 moves in the last week, and 2 of the biggest names that they moved were Beck Warm, and, who has over 4,000 saves for them, as well as their captain, Kyle Olson, who played 5 years for them. And when you look up, what is a Tri-City American in the dictionary, Kyle Olson's picture is going to be what pops up for you. He's a hard 2-way player, plays a 200-foot game, can score goals. He's an Anaheim pick, I believe, and so he's been out with an injury. So we'll see kind of what his status is. And I think you guys are familiar with Jan Seacart, who was moved. So Tri-City's got he was kind of the casualty of having too many forwards, and Bob Torrey, their general manager and president up there in Governor, is someone who takes a lot of pride in helping develop players. And if it can't be with his team, he wants to put them in a position where they can succeed. And that, for him, he was seeing that he maybe wasn't getting the minutes that he needs in order to develop. So, he trades him away to kind of give him a better opportunity. And, you guys have had the opportunity to maybe see him a little bit.
Absolutely. He's scored a goal, I think, for us already. He's seen some time on power plays. I think he was in the shootout last night, too. So he's definitely maybe stepping up in his role with the Pats.
He's going to get some time. The Pats already moved on from Ty Cole, one of their older forwards. So with Seacart being the younger guy, I think he's definitely going to get an opportunity this year. Next year's a question mark, but this year I think they're going to give him all the opportunities.
So you're saying Tri-Cities has moved their starting goaltender and their captain in the last.
Yes.
So to me that sort of screams of a team that's maybe mailing it in for this year. They're sitting in the last wild card spot in the division or the conference, but those are some pretty significant moves.
Yeah, and I think Bob Torrey still feels like his team can make a run for that last wild card spot, and I think he still wants his team to do that. And unfortunately for them, the player that they traded for in the Kyle Olson deal was James Malm, who ended up not reporting, so that kind of hurt them as well. And so, Seattle did the same thing. They traded away their captain in Matthew Edmond, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but. So some of those teams that, Torrey had talked about how if you look at the Western Conference and you look at his team and you see what Portland and Everett are doing in the U.S. division, Kamloops and Kelowna are, Kamloops is loaded right now, and everyone knows Kelowna is going to do something over these next couple days. And, Vancouver's kind of had a little bit of a rough start to their year, but I think these GMs have taken a look and seen like, okay, we kind of know what our team is. We're building towards the future. Let's still kind of push for that playoff experience. No, we may not make a run, but if we can get some assets that are going to help us in the future and still kind of be able to get those, get that experience with that last wild card spot, I think there's 3 or 4 teams that are, maybe 3 teams that are going to kind of fight for that last spot. Mm-hmm. And Kelly Buchberger has got a very good defensive structure, and he's their head coach. And the Americans are in every game, and a big part of that has been their goaltending play. Losing Warm is going to hurt. He played a ton of minutes for them, and but Talon Boyko, who takes over the number 1 role now, Pats fans, the first thing they're going to notice is how big he is. He's 6'6", 185 pounds, and I think that's being light for him. So he's capable of stealing games. He sees a lot of shots. Tri-City gets outshot a decent amount, but that's something that they're comfortable, a style of game they're comfortable playing. And so for him, I think that's going to be, something that that Pats fans are going to want to keep an eye on. And
offense. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to talk about Talon Boyko there. Yeah, he's got a .924 save percentage. Like that's not bad at all. That's right up there.
And I think if you take out his games against Portland, I think it jumps up to 945.
Yeah. Okay.
So he's unfortunately Tri-City's run into a buzzsaw in Portland. I think they've been outscored 22-6 in the 4 games that they've played. So I think that number is right too. Yeah, I believe that if my Minnesota math is correct, it's 22 or 23-6 or 7, something like that. But so Boyko's had kind of a he's still got the numbers, and so he's capable of stealing the game, and he faces a large number of shots. So he keeps them in the game.
Yeah, some goalies like that, getting lots of shots. They really thrive on that, getting into that rhythm.
So
if
Malm doesn't report, he's a 20-year-old?
Yeah, he's a 20-year-old. So right now, Tri-City has an open 20-year-old spot as well as an open import spot.
Right. One of Pat's main assets, we think, is either a goaltender or one of our 20-year-olds. So who knows? Maybe he could be one of our guys could be there.
Yeah, there's so many questions, right? And I think a lot of the questions I've been fielding in the U.S. division is who are the buyers and who are the sellers, and it seems like there's a lot of people who are looking to buy and maybe not as many sellers. But I think kind of how I've answered that is I think you might be surprised. There are teams like Tri-City who maybe are on the fence who take a look at it and say, okay, well maybe we can move up east, we can move a couple other guys maybe, and we can still make the playoffs, and we better position ourselves for this year. Like I think if you remember, like what Brandon did, was it 2 years ago when they moved Cal Clegg?
Mm-hmm.
They looked at what was ahead of them in the division, said, hey, let's still make the playoffs, but let's position ourselves well in the future. So there could very well be moves like that could, some teams could surprise.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. They're kind of selling high on a couple of their guys, and then maybe buy low on somebody else.
Right.
Yep. So but kind of back to Tri-City real quick. Two other guys I wanted to highlight that Pats fans are going to want to keep an eye on. First up front is Sasha Mutala. He's having a really strong season. He's kind of their clear leader up front. He's a Colorado Avalanche draft pick in the 5th round. He's got 41 points in 34 games. He scores. He's got 11 goals, but he also has 30 assists, setting up his teammates. So he had 2 assists again last night. He's a dominant player. He maybe doesn't have some of the talent around him that would maybe help see some of those numbers increase. But given the team that he's on and what he's doing, it's nothing short of impressive. On the back end is Marc Lajoie, and he's going to be a real key player for the Americans in the future. I know they're really high on him. He's a 16-year-old. He was drafted 14th overall in the 2018 Bantam draft, and just 16. He's 6'4", 232. He maybe doesn't have the offensive ability quite yet, but in his own zone, he's as reliable as they come. And, he's playing big minutes. Obviously the WHL doesn't, release ice time. I really wish they did. That would really help you. You see a lot of it with the World Juniors right now. Right. So, they can do it at the junior level, but it's not something that's made available. But, I think if they did release it, Lajoie would be one of the probably right up there for minutes played for the Americans.
Yeah, it seems like they got a pretty balanced scoring attack as well. They don't really have that one guy standing out.
Yeah, and they're maybe a little bit top heavy, but Robbie has done well. He got signed by San Jose, I believe, in the off season, and he fills both an overage spot as well as an import spot. And so they kind of have a little bit of a balance, but they are a little bit top heavy for what they are as well.
Right on. Okay, then we're off into Everett. Now the question I have about Everett is, will Dustin Wolf be back?
He will be back.
He'll be playing?
Yeah. I don't know if he'll play, but
yeah.
I believe they traded Keegan Karki, who took over their starting role while Wolf was gone, and now have Holt. So that to me signifies that Everett's going to have Wolf back for sure. Unfortunately, and maybe this was a leading question from the Canadians to poke fun at the Americans being out of the tournament, but they've been out for a couple days now, so
yeah, that's true. Okay,
he could very well be back, and Wolf is he's a heck of a goaltender, and he talk about stealing games. They really rely on Wolf, and they've kind of had a little bit of a slower pace, 5-3, 1-1 in their last 10 games. But I would be shocked if Wolf isn't there, whether he plays or not, and they roll with Holt. That will be who's their backup now. That is still obviously to be determined, but Wolf will be back.
I don't know. The draft last year was kind of interesting, where there was lots of talented WHL goalies that either didn't get picked or got picked real late, like he did. I was a little surprised by some of that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that took him was his size, right? You see all these NHL goalies, whether it's true or not or whatever, he's not 6'3".
Yeah.
And so, as you see, we saw it last night. Dante Januzzi for Portland is a little bit smaller than Boyko, and he has to work a little bit harder to make some of his saves than Boyko does, who's 6'6" and maybe 7 inches tall. So just naturally, you can maybe get away with a little bit more. But I was shocked how far Wolf fell in the draft. He could very well be someone who could be a steal.
Yeah, exactly. Like he put up as good numbers as Carter Hart, and like he didn't miss a beat with losing him, and I thought, for sure he's going to be mid-round pick, and here was almost the last pick of the draft.
Yeah, everyone expected a regression from Everett when Carter Hart left, and he just stepped right into that role.
Yeah, it was amazing. Wolf Portland fans got to see him when Hart was away at World Juniors for those 2 years. And Wolf stepped in as a 16-year-old, and then as a 17, and you're going, okay, they're in a good spot right now. So they've kind of become known as a goalie factory a little bit out here in the U.S. division.
Right. So they're sitting at 26-9 right now, just behind Portland. What can we expect to see from them?
The first thing you're going to notice is their top line. It's super dangerous. Bryce Kindup, last I looked, led the league in goals. He had 30. I know he's been battling with Adam Beckman. I maybe didn't refresh those stats after last night's game, so I apologize about that. But either way, he's up near the top. Cole Fonstad, who came over from Prince Albert, is an absolute assist machine. 41 assists, 35 games, and so. And then Gage Gonsalves has 38 points. So that top line is deadly. And Kindop can beat you 5-on-5. He can beat you shorthanded. He led the league in shorthanded goals last year. And they can also beat you on the power play. And so that top line is dangerous. When teams shut down that line, they sometimes can struggle a little bit with some depth. I believe they only had one natural center on the roster for a while. So that kind of puts them. They got maybe some guys playing out of position a little bit. When they got Jake Christensen, back, that forced Max Patterson out, who was a big two-way center for them, and forced him into kind of became the casualty of that overage dance that they do. But that's the other key for Everett is that top four is maybe one of the best in the league with Christensen, Wyatt Wiley, Johnny Fairbrother, and Ronan Seeley. That they can defend like the best of them. I think they would do the New Jersey Devils proud in the 2000s sometimes with how they can play.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they also are getting scoring from the back end. Wyatt Wiley's second in defenseman scoring with 35 points. So Christensen's got an absolute cannon from the point on the power play and from the blue line. So that's something to keep an eye on. And as we talked about with Wolf, I don't know what more there is to say. At least, I feel like he's over talked about down here, but maybe for those who don't see, the U.S. division as much, he's one of the top two goalies in the league, him and Hofer.
Yeah.
He's first in save percentage, .941 in, a ton of games played, and second in goals against average at .191. And he's a solid goaltender. So, you touched on it a little bit. Everett's going to be a key team to keep an eye on come the trade deadline here. They acquired Ty Cole and his goals that he's produced for you guys, but it'll be I don't think they're done. I think they're likely to make another move, and especially up front looking for another forward. So, but overall, I think maybe the highest key I would say, and this has kind of been Portland's kind of strategy when they get to him, is they find that if you can get a lead on Everett, you force Everett to get out of their shell, and you can maybe make them kind of play a track meet game a little bit, and don't allow them, when you hear all the cliches of play our game, right? Everett's game is defending and, keeping, locking teams down. So if the opponent can get, the first goal and even up by 2, you can start to expose Everett and some of their weaknesses a little bit.
Right on. Yeah, I'm just looking here at the stats. You have the leading goal scorer, the leading assist point getter, and the highest save percentage in Dustin Wolf all on that team. That's a challenging team that you're going to be coming up against, it looks like.
Yeah, and obviously, like you said, they're going to be looking maybe to add down the middle there. Ty Cole, bring some more goals, some skill, but he's clearly a winger.
Yeah, and Ty Cole, that's a sneaky good acquisition. He was a winner for a while, and so he knows the style of play. He knows the U.S. division. So getting him back into a division that he's familiar with, and maybe a style that, like we talked about off the start, he probably fits that system, really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had a bit of a slow start, but he's been coming on lately. For the Pats.
Yeah, these past couple of weeks we noticed his game has improved, and we thought he might be someone that might garner some attention from somewhere else as a trade. So we weren't surprised to see him go somewhere.
Yeah, one of the things that teams who maybe are not having quite the season that they were looking for can take when they face Everett has lost to Prince George twice in the last week. Everett got him last night, but they've got Wolf and Fasco Rudis away at World Juniors, but both should be back when by the time Regina comes into town. But that's why they play the games, and so Everett and Portland, they've got less than 10 losses on the year, but that doesn't mean that they're not untouchable. And again, it kind of comes down to with Everett, if you can shut down that top line, and now their power play, which is really risen up the charts, they're now up to second in the league at 26.7%. Teams can find that they can have success against them, but Everett's a good team, and they very rarely are making a ton of mistakes, and if a team does make a mistake against them, it often ends up in the back of their net.
Okay, we're going to end it there. This is actually a 2-part interview. He talks about the Portland, Seattle, and Spokane game, but we will save that for next episode, since the only 2 games that are relevant to this week are Tri-City and Everett. So we will play the second half next week for you guys.
Yeah, it ended up being quite a long interview as well. So
yeah.
You get talking hockey and it just flows.
We were saying that you get some people that like to talk about junior hockey. You can go on and on and on.
So. And I've heard Josh on other podcasts. He likes to talk hockey, which it's not a bad thing at all.
No,
and
absolutely.
He was my first pick to come on. So
yeah, that was really good. Thanks for setting that up. So we will wrap it up for today. Yeah, tough week, big week coming up in terms of trade deadline. So we might see a different team heading out on that road trip.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because they're going to be on the bus Wednesday night, and then
I think so. Yeah,
boom, and then they're going to be. Yeah, the trade deadline is going to be happening when they're on the road, so it'd definitely be interesting.
And maybe it's better we had this little blip, kind of bring us back down to reality, and they weren't. Maybe they think, oh, we should hang on to some pieces. I think the sell is on.
No, I don't think even if they would have. Not swept, but won 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 somehow.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a good chance for the team to bond a little bit, and if there are some new guys on this road trip. Yeah, it's gonna be tough though. As Josh alluded to, there's some good teams out there. Anyways, we'll wrap it up. We will see you guys at the rink on Wednesday. Otherwise, have a good week.
Good night.
Good night.